The unreliable narratives. The internet was a vast, indifferent ocean where every local ghost story became a global meme, losing its teeth with every share, every translated caption. In Belgrade, however, the legend of the dancing lady was still sharp enough to cut. For Jelena Petrović, a third-year linguistics student who worked late shifts at a downtown cafe, the legend was an annoyance first, a genuine terror second. The story was simple. If you were alone after midnight, particularly around the old Kosutnik forest edges or the derelict streets near the hippodrome, you might see a woman in traditional Serbian clothing dancing by herself. She was always spinning, always humming, her face obscured by shadow and the frantic movement of her skirt. The rule, repeated in hushed tones by security guards, late-night taxi drivers, and twitchy online forums, was absolute: do not approach her. Do not interrupt the dance. Do not, under any circumstances, let her see that you are watching. Jelena lived in Banovo Brdo, a neighborhood that skirted the ancient, dense woods. Normally, she caught the last bus, the 53, which dropped her a comfortable 5 minutes from her apartment building. It was Friday, October 11th, a night when the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the promise of a cold Balkan winter. Jelena had missed the 53. Her shift had run 30 minutes late, thanks to a sudden influx of tourists who decided they needed espresso at 1 a.m. Standing at the deserted terminal, the schedule board informed her the next bus was not due for another hour. Taxis were non-existent, and her phone showed her banking app weeping pathetically. She could not afford a private ride home. She had one choice: the long walk. "It's fine, Jelena," she muttered, pulling her wool scarf tight over her mouth and nose. "It's just 30 minutes. You are a sensible adult. You are not a nervous teenager who believes every stupid story." The walk usually involved the main boulevard, brightly lit and reasonably trafficked, even at this hour. But the main boulevard was currently torn up for some municipal project, forcing a detour that was signposted in tiny, barely visible script. The detour routed her through the Stara Česma district. Jelena felt a prickle of cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. Stara Česma, the old fountain, was notorious. It was a grid of narrow, cobbled streets lined with pre-war houses and high, crumbling walls, where streetlights flickered with the inconsistent power of old magic. It was the district where the first viral video of the dancing lady had supposedly been filmed 6 months ago, a shaky, distorted clip of a figure twirling under the ghostly halo of a sodium lamp. "Right," Jelena sighed, her breath fogging in the cold air. "Just keep your head down and listen to the podcast." She started walking, her steps echoing too loudly on the pavement. She tried to immerse herself in a true crime story, but the narrative felt thin, flimsy. Her attention was drawn instead to the sounds around her. The distant, metallic clang of the city's heart, the rustle of dry leaves caught in the gutters, and the unsettling silence between the sounds. She turned onto Ulica Vojvode Stepe, the longest street in the detour. Here, the architecture was intimidating. Heavy stone buildings with iron balconies that looked like skeletal hands reaching into the night. The streetlights were spaced too far apart, leaving pools of absolute, smothering darkness between their spheres of sickly yellow light. It was in one of those pools of light that she saw it. It wasn't a sudden, startling appearance. It was simply there, already in motion, as if it had been dancing since the foundation of the city. A figure. A woman. She was positioned precisely under a sputtering, half-broken streetlight, which cast her in a flickering, stroboscopic glow. She wore a long, full-sleeved garment, dark crimson, perhaps, or deep violet, the kind of heavy, embroidered Serbian folk costume Jelena had only seen in museums or historical photos. Her head was tilted back, and her arms were held out to the sides, slightly bent at the elbow, her hands loose, almost supplicating. She was performing the Kolo, the traditional Balkan chain dance, but she was entirely alone. The dance was mesmerizingly wrong. It wasn't joyful or communal. It was a precise, monotonous ritual. Her feet struck the ground with a rhythmic, hard thud-shuffle-thud, a sound that vibrated up through the soles of Jelena's sneakers. The intensity was unsettling. She wasn't dancing for fun, or for an audience. She was dancing as a function. Jelena stopped breathing. She felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin tight and cold. The podcast, still running in her ears, was a meaningless babble of voices, drowned out by the internal screaming of her common sense. It's a prank. It has to be a social media prank. She told herself this even as her feet were frozen to the spot. No prankster would maintain this level of commitment, this unblinking, mechanical motion, for hours alone in the dead of night. The figure, though moving constantly, seemed utterly static. Her back was toward Jelena. The light was behind her, outlining her shape, making her look like a charcoal sketch against the yellow fog. Her hair was bundled under a headscarf, and her face remained invisible. The humming started. It wasn't a tune. It was a low, resonant drone that seemed to originate not from the woman's throat, but from the air itself. It was a single, pure note that bent slightly, rising and falling with the rhythmic thud-shuffle-thud of her feet. It was the sound of a very old machine working tirelessly in the dark. And then, she stopped. The sudden cessation of movement was more terrifying than the dance itself. The echo of her steps, thud-shuffle-thud, reverberated down the empty street, a sound that should not have lingered. Jelena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, desperate bird. She wanted to run, to sprint back toward the main road, but she couldn't break the spell. Her eyes were fixed on the dancer's rigid back. The figure stood perfectly still for 3 agonizing seconds. Then, slowly, mechanically, she turned. Jelena couldn't see a face. What she saw was worse. The light source was directly above, but the shadow cast by the woman's head was impossibly deep, a swirling, oily vortex of nothingness where features should be. It was like looking at a person whose face had been removed from reality, leaving only the shape of a skull wrapped in deep velvet darkness. The humming resumed, but now it was lower, more guttural, a sound of anticipation. The woman didn't walk. She didn't glide. She moved. She took a single, unnatural step toward Jelena. It was a step too long, too smooth, covering the distance that should have taken 3 human strides. Jelena didn't think. Instinct, primal and raw, took over. She spun on her heel and sprinted into the darkness. She ran without looking back, the noise of her own panic-driven footsteps eclipsing the rhythmic horror behind her. She pushed herself past the limits of her endurance, navigating the unfamiliar maze of Stara Česma by sheer desperation. She didn't stop until she stumbled onto the blessed noise and light of a secondary, smaller boulevard, where a kebab shop was still open, its bright fluorescent sign a beacon of sanity. She collapsed against a trash bin, sucking the freezing air into her burning lungs, tears freezing on her cheeks. She was shaking so violently she could barely hold her phone. It was over. She was safe. But as she finally looked at her surroundings, her breath caught again. She had somehow run a wide, panicked circle. She was only 3 blocks from where she had started the detour, but now she faced a dark, overgrown path that led directly into the heart of Kosutnik Forest, a place she avoided even in daylight. And she was no longer alone on this street. In the distance, down the dark, tree-lined path, she saw a flicker of color. It was too far to be distinct, but the movement was unmistakable. The dance had begun again. This time, the humming was clearer, and it sounded less like a drone and more like a name being endlessly repeated, a name Jelena was convinced she recognized but could not quite grasp. Terrified, Jelena turned and ran the other direction, back towards the kebab shop. She didn't care about her money. She flagged down the first passing car, a dented, old Yugo, and begged the driver to take her home, shoving all the crumpled bills in her pocket into his startled hand. She made it back to her apartment. She locked the door, bolted the deadbolt, and pushed her heavy armchair against the frame. She didn't sleep. Chapter 2. The mark. Jelena spent the entire Saturday in a fugue of fear, huddled under her heaviest blanket. She told no one what she had seen. How could she? "I saw the internet monster walking through the city," wasn't a story for her rational, hardworking parents, and it certainly wasn't a story for her cynical university friends. Instead, she did what all modern victims do. She researched. She abandoned the sensationalist YouTube videos and Reddit threads, digging into the deeper, darker corners of the Serbian web. She typed keywords in Cyrillic: Stara Česma, Kolo, Nok, Legenda, Nokna Plasasica. What she found was fragmented, almost anthropological. The earliest references to the night dancer weren't modern. They dated back centuries. It wasn't always a woman in a folk costume. Sometimes it was a disfigured man. Sometimes, merely a twisting shadow. But the core ritual remained the same. A dance performed alone, a movement that was both precise and deeply unwilling. She found a post, buried in a forgotten historical forum from 2008, written by an academic who studied Slavic folklore, a man named Dr. Milan Kostic. The post was titled, "The Unsettling Persistence of the Osuda I Ples, the Condemnation and the Dance." Dr. Kostic wrote about a pre-Christian belief system in the Balkans, the idea of a krivokletnik, or twisted oath taker. A person who commits a terrible, unforgivable sin, a betrayal of family, a violation of sanctity, or a broken vow made before God and nature. The osuda, the doctor wrote, is not death, but a curse. The krivokletnik is denied rest. Their physical body becomes a vessel for the curse itself, which compels them to perform their life's greatest joy, the dance, the kolo, as an eternal, grueling penance. They dance to exhaustion, but exhaustion never comes. They dance until their feet bleed, but the wounds close instantly. They dance not to express life, but to express the ceaselessness of their condemnation. The legends say their face is often obscured because the curse has stripped them of all personal identity, leaving only the condemned function. Jelena read the words, and the bloodless, shadowed void where the woman's face should have been flashed behind her eyes. The stripped identity. She closed the laptop, her hands shaking again. It wasn't a prank. It was a centuries-old curse brought to life by a forgotten road, a missed bus, and a broken streetlight. But the dread wasn't just mental. As she moved around her small apartment, she kept noticing a strange discomfort in her left foot. When she finally took off her sock, she gasped. There was a series of small, perfect, circular bruises running across the top of her foot, just below the toes. They looked exactly like the pressure points from a traditional, stiff leather Kolo shoe. 3 dots, perfectly aligned. The thud-shuffle-thud felt like it was imprinted on her own flesh. She had run. She had escaped, but the mark of the dance had been left upon her. Chapter 3. The inquiry. Monday morning brought an obligation Jelena couldn't avoid, a mandatory seminar presentation. Her foot throbbed with every step, a dull, rhythmic pain that seemed to sync with an internal metronome. She decided she needed help, not from the police, who would laugh, but from the one person who might understand the intersection of superstition and reality, Dr. Milan Kostic. After a frantic hour in the university library, she discovered he was not just an academic but the head of the Department of Slavic Ethnology, still working at the University of Belgrade. Jelena found his office, a dusty, book-choked sanctuary on the top floor of an old building. She knocked, her heart pounding. Dr. Kostic was a man in his late 60s, with a silver ponytail and eyes that looked perpetually amused and deeply sad all at once. He was grading papers, listening to classical music on a small, antiquated tape player. "Miss Petrović," he said, gesturing to a seat piled high with journals. "A linguistics student in ethnology territory. You look like you've seen a ghost, or perhaps failed your Serbian grammar exam." "Worse than the exam, doctor," Jelena whispered, leaning forward. I think I saw the krivokletnik." The amusement vanished from his eyes. They became sharp, focused, and utterly devoid of pity. "The night dancer," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "In Stara Česma." Jelena nodded, tears welling up again from the sheer relief of being believed. "Yes. It was dancing. I ran. But look." She quickly pulled off her shoe and sock, presenting the strange, circular bruises on her left foot. Kostic took her foot gently in his hand. He pressed his thumb against the markings, studying the pattern with clinical intensity. "3 perfect contact points," he murmured. "The imprint of the Kolo shoe. Not a modern bruise. This is a pattern of pressure and impact that is almost ritualistic." He looked back up at her face. "You did not approach her. You did not speak. You simply watched, and then ran." "Yes. She saw me. She stopped. And she turned. Doctor." Her face. It was just darkness. Kostic released her foot and steepled his fingers, staring at the ceiling as if reading ancient script there. "The curse knows when it is observed. It is a thing of the night, and light gives it strength, but observation gives it focus. The mark on your foot, Jelena, is not a memory of the dance. It is an anchor." Jelena swallowed hard. "An anchor. What does that mean?" "The krivokletnik is bound to the place of its betrayal, the place where the osuda was cast, usually a piece of land or a specific spring, the old fountain. The legend says that to be freed, the dancer must pass the curse on to an innocent. Not by touch, but by witnessing and marking them." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical, terrifying whisper. "The 3 points, the marks of the dance, mean the curse is tethering itself to you. It's a silent invitation, Miss Petrović. The night dancer wants you to finish the dance she can never leave. You are being drawn back to Stara Česma." "No," Jelena choked out. "I won't go back. I'll stay inside." "It doesn't work that way," Kostic said, shaking his head. "The draw is not physical. It is psychological. The rhythm is now inside you. You will feel compelled. You will hear the humming. And if you deny it, the legend states the dancer will come closer, slowly, street by street, until she finds you at your doorstep." Jelena stood up, backing away from the cluttered desk. "There must be a way to break it. A counter spell. Something." Kostic smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "My dear, if there was a simple counter spell, the krivokletnik would have been put to rest centuries ago. But there is a way to delay it. A way to fight. You must understand the nature of the osuda. The curse is a loop, a cycle of repetitive action. To break the loop, you must introduce something new into the ritual." He paused, running a finger over the spine of a massive, leather-bound volume. The dance is Kolo. The Kolo is about community. It is about a shared rhythm and a shared song. The night dancer has no community. She has no song. Only the drone of her condemnation. So what do I do? Jelena pleaded. You must find what was betrayed, Caustic replied, his eyes finally meeting hers. You must find the song of the Krivokletnik's innocence. The memory of the life they lost. You have to find out who she was, and what the original sin was. Only then can you introduce the counter note, the one thing that will halt the rhythm of the curse. And if I fail, then you will feel the rhythm become stronger, Caustic said, picking up his pen and returning to his papers. The pain in your foot will intensify. Soon, it will feel like your left foot is moving without your permission. And then, your right foot will follow. He dismissed her with a wave of his hand. Now go. I have exams to grade. And you, Miss Petrović, have a curse to research. Jelena left the dusty office, the sound of the professor's classical music, a precise, unrelenting waltz, seeming to underscore the chilling advice. She was marked. She was anchored. And somewhere, in the shadow-drenched streets of Belgrade, the mechanical, solitary dance was waiting for her to join. The rhythm was already pulsing beneath her skin. Jelena now faced two terrifying prospects: the inevitable approach of the dancer, and the daunting task of digging into centuries of forgotten history to find a single, essential truth that could save her soul. Her investigation would take her from the university archives to forgotten church crypts, all while the phantom rhythm of the thud-shuffle-thud grew louder in her mind. The first step had to be to identify the betrayal. The first physical item she needed to locate was the old fountain, Stara Česma, itself, the original locus of the curse, a place she hadn't dared to approach since that terrible night. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video so you never miss an upload.